today's webinar, which is going to be hosted by myself, Lisa Ashford. I'm CEO of Ethex, a direct impact investment platform here in the UK. And I'm joined by James Anthony, who is from Friends Provident Foundation. Welcome, James.
Thank you very much.
Today, we're going to be talking about democratising finance, how people-led investing is transforming the UK. It's going to be a very informal conversation, and James and I will just work through a number of the issues that we think are important. And you are very welcome to submit any questions via the chat function. I will either feed those into the conversation or we'll take some of those Q&As at the end. And we will be running for about 45 minutes to an hour today. So feel free to put your questions in whenever you would like. So yeah, great. So thanks, James, again for joining me today. Do you want to give everyone a bit of a background of who you are and Friends Provident Foundation, and we'll get stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm James Anthony. I'm the social investment portfolio manager at Friends Provident Foundation. I've worked in the sort of social and impact investment space for about 3 years now. And before that, I've been working in the charitable sphere for a few more years and in general, like financial kind of roles, financial services for about the last 10 years. Um, Friends Provident Foundation. We are 20 years old. We had our 20th anniversary last year. And we are an endowed foundation with a mission striving for a fair and sustainable economy that supports both people and planet. Um, like I say, we've been around for about 20 years. My role is specifically focusing on social investments. So those are investments that further our charitable purposes and get a financial return if that is sometimes concessionary. And then that can be the case. But we've been in the realm of doing social investments for quite a long time. I think our first one was in around 2007, and we've gradually built up our portfolio over the years. I joined about a year ago to accelerate the sort of social investment program. As it stands, around 17% of our overall endowment is invested in social investments by investment value, and one of those is Ethex. And that's a long-standing relationship that we've had going back to the beginning, I think, pretty much of Ethex, and we've supported in various ways, whether that be investment and grants over the years. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, James. And yeah, it's been a great working relationship over the years as this whole market has changed and this idea of democratization of finance has really, I think, gained pace over the last 10 years. So let's just get down to the nitty-gritty of it. What is democratization of finance? We fling around all these jargon words and phrases in our sector. You know, at its very highest level, I would say, well, it's trying to broaden access to basic and fair financial services to everyone. It's trying to empower individuals so that they can make choices for themselves on their financial situation and their financial future, rather than perhaps historically we've relied on perhaps too few, too big financial institutions that may have dominated in the past. That's very much changing with sort of the whole market becoming much more competitive with a lot of new entrants have got different approach, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. Technology obviously playing a really important part actually in democratization, really, because it's enabling individuals to do things that they just couldn't do before, quite frankly. So really innovative solutions and making it really accessible for individuals. And, I guess that is also enabling this power shift from a few financial institutions that have held the power to very much a sort of consumer-led people choice markets, being able to take different products from different financial service organizations and really fit and choose them to their needs, whatever that might be, whether that's, pensions or savings products or investments or things like that, really. So why do we care about this? Why is it important? Why does it matter to you, James, as Friends Provident?
Well, it matters for a lot of reasons. I'll talk about why it matters to us at Friends Provident first. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned that our mission is around a fair and sustainable economy, and that sort of culminates in a vision that we have for a 4D economy, and that's what I use as sort of my North Star when I'm doing my social investment approach. And so the 4Ds that we envisage in a well-working economy would be a diversified economy. So a diversity of knowledge, experience, background, being in positions of economic decision making, to better represent our society as a whole. The second would be a decarbonized economy, which I'm sure a lot of people can understand what we're seeking out there with a net zero transition. And we like to focus on decarbonization of investment portfolios as well. The third of our 4Ds is decentralized. So trying to break up basically the concentrations of economic power that there are in a small number of locations through the UK, and trying to build instead um, better local resilient economies. And then coming round to our democratization piece, that's the fourth D for us. And so for us, we see a lot of power again, like you mentioned, Lisa, power structures, a lot of power being held by a small number of very large corporations, and a lot of economic decision making being made by a small number of people, often of a similar demographic. And so shifting that power and opening up channels for individual people, everyday people, to be able to get into those positions of whether it's economic decision making, whether it's deciding what they want to invest in aligned with what their values are, or gaining access to other financial services that historically haven't been available to them, is super, super important to us. So very, very linked to what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
Right. And I think, um, when we're talking about examples of democratization, why is it important to Ethex? Well, I guess we see ourselves as one of those players in this disruption of financial services, and particularly in the, you know, tech for good uh, place in the market. So, there's lots of different types of organizations that are playing in this space. You've got fintechs and mobile banking, um, people being able to find products and open accounts really easily straight through their mobiles. There's crowdfunding platforms that we're part of that world, that's allowing people to make individual decisions on what type of investments they want, and specifically what impact they want to see as well. So, being able to know exactly where your money's going, rather than it being, historically, I think, being virtually impossible probably to track your course of money from when you might put it into a bank account or make an investment. Um, Extension of that, peer-to-peer lending, a lot more peer-to-peer lending platforms now. So enabling entrepreneurs and small businesses to accelerate their growth through getting access to individuals, which is, really helping to fuel the economy. And, there's also things like open banking going on, which will allow much more um, instant decisions to be made about people's credit and what kind of products they can access in a much fairer way, hopefully. And then there's the whole other side of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, which I just won't go into because, well, that's a whole different world. Um, and yeah, I suppose for Ethex, not only do we see, ourselves as uh, one of these organizations within this democratization space, but we're also trying to enable others who are doing that as well. So, and we'll come back to this in a bit, in the affordable finance sector, whether it's credit unions or fair consumer lending organizations, or try not to use a jargon word, but organizations that are lending to small and medium-sized enterprises that wouldn't necessarily be able to get a loan or finance from a bank as well, which is, can be quite difficult for those organizations to set up and grow. And I guess, in terms of individuals, what's the role of individuals in all of this? And, they are the ones that are making the decisions and putting the power of their money forward. In basically, they want more transparency, they want more choice. I think the power of the pound in the pocket is much stronger these days because of this greater competitive environment. So, organizations and financial service organizations are having to really step up, aren't they? And listen to their customers. And those that do seem to be really succeeding, and those that don't are struggling. And I think there is, well, we certainly think that there's still very much a demand for values aligned investments. I know there's been a bit of a backlash there in terms of ESG bashing. What do you make of that, James?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a difficult time. We alongside our social investments, we also have more traditional investments. Some of those sort of sit in the ESG space, and we've definitely seen there be a big backlash in the last few years. Various factors taking that into account to do with like political sentiment and greenwashing and a lot of that stuff that's been happening. We still believe, like you say, Lisa, that there's great demand from people for investing um, themselves in things that have social and environmental outcomes. And so we firmly believe that with that demand, we should be like doubling down essentially on our values and keeping these opportunities open so that people can actually make those decisions to invest it in that kind of way. I think it's super,
Mm,
super important. And a lot of our strategy moving forward is kind of doubling down on impact investing and that kind of space. So we're very much of the opinion that the values are still there. Um, yeah.
and in terms of uh, individuals having access to, these types of green products, green funds, ESG funds, etc., do you think that um, the desire to label stuff as green, even though it's not necessarily green, do you think that that will um, get thwarted over time with the introduction of these new labels coming in and greater regulation? Because, you know, people have had these choices to make investments into green funds, and turns out some of them haven't been that green. So I guess almost like the next layer of democratization is people demanding full transparency and actually the government
Yeah,
sort of reacting to that.
that's what I was going to say. And like, I think the thing is that there hasn't been too much transparency about what a green product is. Not clearly, no clear definitions or anything like that in the past. And so the more transparency we can have with these products, the better, because ultimately that builds confidence in the sort of impact credentials of what you're investing in, if you can see what the impact actually is. And we know that that's something that Ethex is very good at in doing yourselves, for sure.
Um, so so how do you see your role as a foundation within this, James?
Yeah, really interesting question. I mean, we as a foundation, we try to support um, in various ways. Um, we For a start, I mean, we have this historical relationship with you at Ethex, so we're trying to support the underlying institutions that are like building a democratized economy or democratized investment in this case. So we're passionate about making sure that the platforms are there so that people can make these decisions to invest alongside their values. So whether that's through investing directly or making grants and that kind of support, I think it's really, really important. A second way that we can support is actually investing in some of the things that go onto your platforms as well. So there's a lot of community energy stuff that we've invested in the past, which has been really, really interesting for us, and a lot of that stuff comes through your platform as well. And in investing in these types of opportunities, I guess as an institutional investor, we can build confidence to the retail investor that this is a good, viable, impactful investment opportunity. So we can build confidence in individual investments in the market and hopefully grow it as it needs to grow to sort of build the economy that we want to see. Um, Another way that we can support is perhaps by de-risking some opportunities. So if there's ways that we can
Mm,
provide blended finance, um, or even some kind of like first loss capital to opportunities to sort of take the risk away, so that if there's any kinds of defaults or anything like that, we would kind of absorb that. That would be a really interesting way that we can support these opportunities too. But I'm very cognizant that we're talking about democratization here, and we don't want to come in and overcrowd
right.
these opportunities. So we need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that doesn't push retail investors out of these opportunities themselves. So sort of that balance between building um, building confidence, de-risking, but also not overcrowding it. I think one other thing that we can do is use our influence as an institutional investor. I have a colleague who works on investment engagement, and we can use our influence in that way, whether that's trying to influence companies that we already invest in to move in this direction, or um, policymakers as well. We have less influence in that sphere ourselves, but other foundations that are working in the space that do have the sort of policy making connections could definitely consider those types of approaches as well.
Mm. I was just thinking about, not crowding out the crowd and
Mm,
um, on our sister platform, Energize Africa, right sidebar here. Um, there's a program called Crowd Power, which actually is run as a spin out of FCDO, so the development office within the government, and it's sort of recognizing that individuals want to play their part in climate change, and sometimes they struggle to understand what they can do to help. And there are things that you can do at home, etc. But
mm,
people forget that using your power of your money actually is also a really good potential way of um, helping to take action on climate change. And so
Yeah.
So, they said, okay, well, what can we do to help boost activity from the crowd? So, again, like you said, can we de-risk? Do some research to make sure that we understand what levers we can pull to accelerate crowd investment and do so in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of fascinating how people want to do good with their money. How can we help them do it? As a foundation, how can you help leverage, so that we always use that word, don't we? So that
Yeah.
the power of your money can bring in a lot more private money. And
Yeah.
that's what we all want, isn't it? So that we can really amplify and scale up.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that is not often thought about. But yeah, I mean, you think everyone does want to make differences in their lives that can contribute, well, not everyone, but like most people, that would contribute towards environmental and social outcomes, like the number of people that that recycle is one example, but the number of people that invest their money in these types of opportunities is low. And I guess those are some of the challenges that we're coming across.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a bit more about those challenges, shall we?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess, from our perspective, it's really important to work with organizations like yourself to try and get over some of the hurdles, and break down some of the barriers, because relatively speaking, in terms of green investments as a proportion of all investments, um, green or social, I should say, not just green. It's a relatively small amount, and breaking into mainstream, or breaking out of a niche can be quite difficult, actually, especially for some of us slightly smaller organizations who are trying to push the boundaries and blaze a bit of a trail. So so that's, it's really helpful to have organizations such as yourselves who are trying to lift us up, and organizations like us, so that we can do more, and try and become much more of a part of the conversation when it comes to
Mm.
investing. There's actually a campaign out at the moment. Oh, I can't remember who put it out, but it's about the proportion of females who invest, which is far, far lower than men who invest. And as we know as well, women have got much lower pension contributions than men as well. But actually, interestingly, we find that a lot of women are particularly interested in investing for good as well. So there's a real interesting um, conundrum there, to not only encourage women to invest, but actually when they want to invest, or when they get comfortable investing, they perhaps want to invest uh, in creating a fairer future, and you know a,
Yeah.
a,
It
a
would be
fair
interesting to
transition.
see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how those statistics switch when it comes to the investing in impact, I'm sure.
Right. Yes. And I
Yeah.
think it's, as you can imagine, I think it flips, actually.
Mm.
Um, so, we've got to really make it easy, and, you've got to use the power of peers to help, normalize this and make positive investing more uh, accessible and understandable. And Friends for Earth have got their, I think it's Move Your Money, is that right? Campaign that uh, uses the power of peers to talk about money, and to try and make it less intimidating, because there's lots of people who find it quite intimidating to make investments, actually, which we've got to really make it easy for people and make it easy for people to understand. And of course, there's lots of macroeconomic factors going on at the moment as well, which we have to bear in mind. So, we've got to try and create that cut through in what is quite a big, ever-changing world at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
it's like a difficult macroeconomic state because, yeah, with the sort of cost of living crisis and general wealth inequality, um, yeah, a lot of people have been turning back to the sort of short-term returns approach, which is pretty damaging for that sort of values and environmental and social related investing. Um, and so being able to sort of switch us back into that long-term thinking for the long-term impacts that we're wanting to see is super important, how to do that.
yeah, actually, there's a question that's come through regarding transparency and choice. Um, Individuals also want trust. There's no easy way for individuals to enter the conversation when they're met with no transparency and confusing choices, which doesn't lead to, yeah. So, and I guess, historically, the financial crisis led to a lot of mistrust in financial service organizations. And so there is a real fear factor there, isn't there? And quite difficult to get impartial uh, information by just searching the web and trying to find out what products are out there and who's trustworthy. Thankfully, there's people like Good with Money who are pretty good at doing things like that, and that's sort of a development over the past few years. But hopefully, we'll see
Yeah.
more of that. Um,
Yeah, I think the more transparency, the better, like you say, builds confidence. People can understand what they're investing in. Um, we try to push transparency as much as we possibly can, both with our investment managers, but also ourselves. Like we try to push the dial on how transparent we can be in our processes on our website, all of that stuff. So obviously, transparency is a journey. You get more and more transparent as time goes on, hopefully. But that's something that we're really, really interested in ourselves as well.
yeah. We were going to touch upon a couple of case studies, just to give some examples of democratization in action. And I can pull in a couple more of the questions as well as we go. So I was going to talk about Solar for Schools as an example. So they're an organisation that works nationwide to roll out PV panels across schools around the UK. They have quite a big proportion of their portfolio in quite deprived areas, and that model can bring about cost savings. It means that the school doesn't have to put the upfront money investment to put the solar panels on, because the crowd effectively are coming in and investing to pay for those panels, and then they get paid a target return over the course of, it's a bond in this case. And part of that also, one of the benefits is they have a really strong education campaign as well. So not only are they doing that, but they're also educating all the kids in the schools as well. And that has a ripple effect to their families and the community that they live in. So that's really great, trying to get awareness out there. But it's a very accessible type of investment because it's £50 minimum. And you also have the innovative finance ISA as well, which was brought in by the government to provide a tax efficient wrapper for even innovative investments. So that's really interesting. It's a really great example of democratizing a really important and nationwide scheme that can be rolled out to more and more and more and more schools. I think
Yeah.
you had another one,
I
didn't
was just
you?
gonna say two things. Yeah, two things that I love about that. One is the nationwide aspect, like the ability for these things to be scalable and brought out across the country, and there to be a model that is replicable. Super, super important. Really, really great. Love it. And the second is £50 minimum investment. Like that is, you know, democratization in action, like someone being able to invest in something that has clear environmental and social benefit for as little as £50 is real great access for people. And then yeah, there's obvious environmental outcomes, but there's also the social outcomes and the fact that economic flows are kept within those local communities and with the schools. I
Right.
think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I
Have you
mean,
got
I can
another
touch
one?
upon an example. Yeah, I've got one. We actually invested in this one a while back, and they've also done some shares, some raises on Ethex as well. But I wanted to talk about Energy Garden, which is a community energy project that is based in London. And what they do is they've raised money and install solar panels. Again, similar kind of theme, but it's installing solar in disused um, tube stations and overground stations, and using the revenue from the solar energy to basically build a community and create spaces and create thriving gardens in these disused areas of these stations, which is really great. It has a social aspect, it has an environmental aspect. They also do educational programs as well. Um, and theoretically, this is another thing that is a replicable kind of model and has the potential for scale. But we got involved with the team back in 2018, I think, originally. And since then, they've had a couple of raises on FX, I think raised about £1 million in total. And
Yeah.
they have over 500 members, which is just a great signal that, again, it's sort of democratization in action because there's over 500 individual investors supporting um, this one project, this one,
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah. And uh, watch this space. They're coming up again soon, later in the year, for
Okay, I
more
don't think I even
projects.
knew that.
Yeah. So thank you for that one. Um, and then uh, there's a couple of questions about scale, so we'll come back to those in a minute because I think we can feed those in. We were going to talk about affordable finance as well, and yes, this is important. I mentioned earlier that democratization super important because we want everybody to be able to access fair financial services and whatever that is, whether it's affordable credit, whether it's a um, bank account, investment. Uh, anyway, so Fair for You is an organisation that we have supported before. So they provide affordable loans to individuals and families, specifically who are needing to buy white goods. So they need a washing machine or, they need a new cooker. And individuals haven't necessarily been able to get that affordable credit from anywhere else, or they've they might have had bad experiences with loan sharks or people, charging exorbitant amounts of interest. So that's a good organisation. I think. Have you supported Fair for You as well?
I don't know whether we've supported Fair for You specifically, but in our earlier years as a foundation, we were very like one of our focus areas was on financial inclusion.
Okay.
Um, it's something that we very much support, and yeah, I mean, you took all of the words out of my mouth. It's sort of giving, it's doing that democratization piece by giving people who usually it can be really difficult to get access to, yeah, those basic things like a bank account or like a line of credit or something like that. And with the line of credit, it comes with aggressive, you know, follow-ups and extortionate interest rates and stuff like that. So giving a more affordable um access to that kind of service super important as well.
Yeah. And another quick one, Salad Money that we've worked with as well,
Yeah.
uh, coming soon, by the way. Uh, they do a really good job because they work with people to, and they're a really great example because they are starting to use open banking as well, so that they can make really fast credit decisions for individuals by getting better transparency on the person's financial status in real time. But also, many of their clients might have accidentally have got a bad credit history, and they'll still lend to them, whereas they would have been completely thrown out the system or blocked by a lot of
Yeah,
traditional
I think
financial
I think
services.
they use information that others don't necessarily use in their approach. So like if they've been paying rent for the last 3 months, they use that as a sign of good credit and stuff like that that not all credit issuers use as well. So yeah, they've got a really interesting approach. So
Exactly. And also help to educate people about the types of benefits or supports that they could be actually accessing as well. So there's that kind of like whole wraparound as well, which is, I think probably much more likely uh, to exist in the social space. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily something that they get paid for, but it helps provide services, and it helps to get really great customer loyalty and a very good reputation as well. So that strengthens them as an organization. Um, Now, coming back to the scale question, well, this is all brilliant, but how do we scale it up? Um, well, I suppose there's top level, uh, work, and then there's sort of grassroots. And let me just ask you one of the questions that's come in, which is probably in the middle, but there we go. Someone's asked a question about in order to scale up, for example, community energy, um, perhaps there needs to be more of a underwriting by institutions so that the organisations know that they're going to be able to uh, fill the offers if they're really big, for instance. And I think there is this demonstration within Kiva that there's a backfilling of loans, and certainly on flipping to Energize Africa as well. It's something that a tactic that we've used as well through UK aid support. Either putting in anchor investment right at the start, momentum match funds as we sort of go through the campaign, or being able to backfill so that we know the campaign's going to close. And obviously, organisations can get more confident, I guess, if they know that there's an institution there. Is that something that you've done before, or?
So we have not done underwriting before that I'm aware of. But yeah, talking about ways that foundations can support, that is definitely one, and definitely one that I have a personal interest in sort of exploring because yeah, scaling up from the individual project that works at a local community to the massive scale nationwide, all of that kind of stuff very difficult, and it's about accessing different investors, I think, and yeah, being able to again maybe de-risk or provide that confidence to for other private investors or anyone else to bring in the level of scale to scale of money to scale these projects up to a national level would be super, super important. So a great point slash question.
Yeah. And I think comes back to, I suppose there's two things. There's either the types of organizations that are set up to operate nationally. So, essentially they can scale to the extent that they have either pipeline of projects or money coming in to fund them. Solar for Schools, great example of potentially, the pipeline's massive. Um, so that's something that can be really scaled up really nicely. Individual projects which are grassroots, I guess we need to find ways of um, bundling those together potentially, or providing some connector that can bring in this investment to scale. And I guess it's a combination of things, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
if you have got money potentially coming from the crowd, like you said before, you don't necessarily want to crowd it out. But uh,
exactly. Yeah, I was going to
uh,
say you need to do this with the balance of not crowding out everyone. Yeah, all of the individual investors as well. But it'll be an interesting time with the local power plan coming in and a huge amount of investment sort of committed to short-term finance for communities, doing community work, community energy, that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see how that sort of shapes the onward investment requirements. If it's just short-term financing, what happens about later down the line when they're sort of at the stage to come to Ethex or other platforms like yourselves as well. It'll be interesting to see how that challenge unfolds, I would say.
mm. And then another question, or I guess statement, how do companies leverage their individual investors to garner other types of funding? Um, and uh, I guess case studies are a great thing as well, aren't they? To show examples, to normalize, to just get the information out there, really, isn't it? And I guess as an industry, we don't necessarily do that in a very joined up way. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's certainly something that could help with the scale up is, if there's one message, top line message that's about making your money do good. I guess there are several campaigns, but really getting behind that and providing the right case studies and everything, I think it would be really powerful as well.
Yeah, learning is really powerful. Learning, a type of financial or investment model that's worked really well, is really valuable, but also learning from things that haven't worked as well would be
Mm,
really important, I think. So it's that, yeah, collective learning as we're all coming along and sharing amongst everyone who's sort of working in these kinds of areas, would be really beneficial.
yeah. And I guess as well, because as we said before, there's lots of different actors in this whole world of democratization, and things are changing really quickly as well. We've got to be really open-minded about working with people that we wouldn't necessarily work with before, or unusual collaborations which can lead to all kinds of interesting things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Well, I think we have gone through all of the questions, so thank you for those. And many thanks, James, for joining today. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. So thank you so much for taking the time out, and thanks everyone for listening. And this is a series of webinars, so we hope to provide more in the series, and hope you're listening to those. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to listening to the rest.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Cheers.